Hello and welcome to the Seahawkers podcast. I'm Brandon Schultz, and I am joined by my good buddy Adam Emmert as we're having a four-part conversation now on the 2024 NFL quarterbacks, soon-to-be NFL quarterbacks coming out of the draft this year. The Seahawks, yes, they may not need one. They might need one. We like to talk quarterbacks every year. And Adam, here we are into part four.
And unexpected part four. Brandon sprung this on us here. And look, I'm guessing where you wanted to go with it is just in terms of the Seahawks and where they're looking with some of these quarterbacks and kind of how that may or may not shake out for them.
Well, you threw out the idea of, or the question of how many of these quarterbacks go in the top 10. And it's kind of a difficult question to answer because, well, for one, you don't normally see a volume of quarterbacks who are even capable of having a significant number go inside the top 10. The last time we saw a really significant number was 2021 when it was Trevor Lawrence and the Niners, hilariously traded up for Trey Lance. And then we saw, ahead of him, Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
And then I guess there was a fourth one because Justin Fields was number 10.
That's exactly right. And, I thought Trevor Lawrence would be good. He's been okay. I think he can get better. I really did like Zach Wilson a lot. That's my biggest miss of a guy I thought that would be good that ended up not being good is Zach Wilson. And part of that was I got tricked a little by the arm talent end of things and the arm angles and, being able to flip his hips and, throw it 50 yards and all that nonsense. It got me.
You weren't the only one. He got it. Yeah. You got a lot of us.
Yeah. I liked Justin Fields. I'm surprised that he hasn't gotten better as a passer to this point in his career. I thought he'd be better from the pocket than he is. But the legs match up to what I thought. And then Trey Lance is exactly who I thought he was. A guy who wasn't ready, would never be ready. And so, yeah, you have that group and then you compare it to this one. I think this group is top to bottom more talented as a whole and more ready for the NFL. Because, you talk about like, say, even Trey Lance. Wait, he had a cup of coffee at North Dakota State? And all these guys, they all have a zillion starts, really. And that experience, I think, will help translate to the NFL. It's shown to be that way in the past.
Yeah, if there's one guy that you could pick out of the bunch as having the least experience, it might be Caleb. I guess. Because, Jane Daniels played 5 years. He was a starter for, he was a starter in Arizona State before he transferred to LSU. And then he started both the final 2 years. So, 2 good years. You had, Nix has a ton of experience. Penix has experience. McCarthy experience running an NFL offense, which is something Trey Lance didn't have. Jordan Travis, good couple years of experience at Florida State. So yeah, it's a relatively experienced group.
It really is. And we go into a lot of these drafts, and I've said it many years as we've gone into some of these drafts, like, yeah, man, I mean, all these quarterbacks are hyped up and, half of them statistically are busts, if not worse. Like, so let's not get our hopes up and all of that. And yeah, that is proven out to be true for the most part. Of all the classes that we've broken down over the years, I think this is the one where it will be that exception to the rule where of these 6-7 guys, however you put it, that 4 to 5 of them end up being solid NFL starters.
Which benefits our team, the Seahawks, because I don't see them necessarily, they can't trade into the top 3. I just don't even think that they would have the firepower to be able to trade into the top 3. Could they get a little bit closer if maybe someone fell outside of the top 3 to where they could move up? I think so. But let's answer your question first of how many quarterbacks inside the top 10. If I'm just going to go based off of the mock draft database and that we're just talking about, let's look at who is projected to take quarterbacks, because you have the Bears at number 1. You have the Commanders at number 2. You have the Patriots at number 3. You could easily see all those teams staying where they are, taking a quarterback. They're all quarterback needy teams. But then outside of you see the Vikings in need of a quarterback. Obviously, they have a couple draft picks. They have what, 11 and 23.
I don't know. I didn't bring my tablet in here so I could pull up the draft order. Let's just run through the draft order real quick because that'll help me kind of organize it real quick. So it's Bears, Commanders, Patriots, Arizona, and then
the 4th pick is, you said Arizona. The 5th pick is the Chargers.
Okay.
Giants at number 6. Like
they don't take a quarterback.
They need to, but the strange thing is they're not being talked about as a team that's going to take a quarterback.
Yeah, which is insane to me. Like I love me Drew Lock. I do. And maybe he has a Geno type situation unfold for him in New York. I'm rooting for it. I hope it happens. It feels unlikely. So, and as far as Daniel Jones goes, I mean, what are we talking about? Like you already catfished up and gave him that stupid deal. Like maybe, I don't know, quit, throwing good money after bad. Draft a freaking quarterback.
Hey, like I said in the last show, so there's some NFL owners that do dumb things, and the Giants organization is one of those organizations that does it consistently. So,
man,
you got Tennessee Titans at number 7.
They
have Will Levis.
They could draft a quarterback.
They could, but they're probably not going to.
You're right. Yeah, I'm low on Levis. I have been from the beginning. I know he had the great first game and then came back down to earth, but I mean, I don't know. If you see greatness in him, not you, but the proverbial you, like, great.
Atlanta at number 8.
They should draft a quarterback.
But they have a starter.
For the next year or two. I mean, Kirk is getting older, coming off an Achilles.
It would make sense.
Yeah.
I just don't know if they're going to do it.
They probably won't.
I mean, they already traded for Kirk Cousins, which if you're at number 8, why don't you just go?
Well, they don't need any more draft picks because they're so loaded and ready to win right now. All their offensive weapons are amazing. The offensive line is amazing. The defense is amazing. That's all I've heard all offseason.
They're just a quarterback away.
That's what I've heard.
Now they have him.
Yeah.
Chicago at number 9. They'll have a quarterback by that pick.
Yeah. Either trade back and pick a zillion offensive linemen or pick the best offensive lineman you can right there.
The Jets, you could make an argument for them taking a quarterback at number 10.
Yeah.
They probably won't, though.
No, because if you're going to try to maximize the Aaron Rodgers window here this year and next year, you're going to draft off offensive line. There's no doubt.
And then you have Minnesota at number 11. So I think...
And the Broncos at 12, who need a quarterback as bad as anybody.
Yeah, but your question was top 10. Would Minnesota or Denver trade up? I think that is possible. Although Denver doesn't have a whole lot of trading up potential to do, but Minnesota does. I think Minnesota trades into the top 10. I think there's 4 quarterbacks that go in the top 10.
Okay. So that would be Caleb, Daniels, May, JJ?
Yep.
Okay. Do you think they go 1, 2, 3 then? And then somebody
I think
trades
1, 2,
into
3,
number 4?
5. I think Arizona may stay put.
Okay.
I think that Charger spot might be the most likely.
You would think they're open for business.
I would think so too.
Yeah.
Because I think they need I think they want to go receiver. There's enough depth at receiver that if Arizona takes their guy who's the top guy, then I think they probably see enough to be able to move down to 11 and be able to take one of any number of guys.
Well, so here would be my question. Why in the world would the Vikings trade up from 11 if they're not going to get into the top 3? Like, because basically after 4, like, I mean, what, the Giants are your only other team that you're looking at that I think most people would be like, yeah, that makes the most sense for them to take a quarterback. And there's still another quarterback or 2 on the board. Like, why waste the draft capital?
Some organizations do silly things, but there's also the potential of, because there are so many guys, that there may be on some teams' draft boards 4 guys who are their top guys. You see the 3 go off 1, 2, 3, and you want to make sure and get that 4th guy, because there could be competition. We've only gone through the quarterback needy teams now through the top 12 with Minnesota and Denver. There are other teams that could
The
be looking at
Raiders.
quarterback, including Seattle, that I could make an argument that could move up into that number 5 spot. What would it take for you, Adam? What would the scenario be? I saw the potential that Jaden Daniels is not one of the top 3 quarterbacks. If he were to fall to number 5, to where the Seahawks, where I could argue that they
Mhm.
would have the potential to have enough draft capital to go up and get him, you'd have to do a Trey Lance style trade to do it, where you're giving up your first rounder in 2024, a first rounder in 2025, and a first rounder in 2026.
Mhm.
Maybe throw in a third rounder in there somewhere too, just to balance things out.
Mhm.
But would you make that trade to get Jaden Daniels at number 5?
I'm not an expert on draft trade value, right? But what I've been hearing from people who seem to be is that it's going to be at least that kind of price tag, if not more, this year, just because of the competition. That would be a big fat hell no.
Oh,
Hell no, to give up that kind of draft capital for a guy who I think is got absolute super
he was
duper
your number
star.
1 quarterback on the board. What do
Yeah.
you mean you're saying no?
Because even if you do that, then now you set up that quarterback for failure over the next 3-4 years, because you can't surround him with talent. And we all know that you have to build your team primarily through the draft and not through free agency. It's how it's worked in the NFL since free agency became what it is today. Especially when you've got, here's what it would take, Brandon, for me.
Okay.
You would have to guarantee me that Jordan Travis was not available with your third round pick. If you guarantee me he was gone and you couldn't pick him up in the 3rd,
Yeah.
okay, maybe, maybe, but I would rather trade up to a lesser spot and grab Bo Nix, Michael Penix, one of those guys, because I'm not sure that the delta is going to be that huge between Daniels and Penix and Nix at the end of the day. Like, I think it's more likely that Daniels is going to be really, really good than Penix, but I think Bo Nix is going to be really, really good. Like, his likeliness for that is pretty high too.
Interesting. So the other question then would be, let's say Minnesota trades into that number 5 spot because they have the draft capital to do it. Somebody
Mhm.
trades down with, well, I guess it would be the Chargers. Let's say their guy then isn't there at number 11. Would you, let's see, in terms of, start thinking about, for one, would you trade up to leapfrog the Denver Broncos to get into that number 11 spot ahead of them, thinking that, Sean Payton, Bo Nix, that makes, I think, a lot of sense
Oh
for
man.
both the Broncos and a position for him. In terms of draft capital, going up from number 16 overall um,
11.
to number 11, 5 spots. If you look at the draft value chart, it's like 250 points. It's essentially a third round. You could do maybe a second round pick next year
Mhm.
and your first round pick, and
From this year.
maybe your first round pick from this year, a second round pick next year,
Okay.
and then you are kind of overpaying, but
Okay.
I think if you're going for a quarterback, it probably makes a ton of sense. And you could even see Denver being in position to say, hey, if you're getting calls from other teams, we want to work with you. We'll be willing to give up another pick just so we don't miss our guy at 12. Like, call us first and let us give you draft picks. So you're probably going to be paying a premium. It's probably going to take a second next year, and gosh, maybe even a third this year. So would you do something like that for Bo Nix?
Well, because I'm a petty jerk, I love screwing over the Broncos. It's one of my favorite pastimes as a Seahawks fan. And for them to get ahead of them by a draft spot and steal their quarterback. Just the pettiness inside of me. I love that, number one. But if that guy is Bo Nix and all you have to do is give up the extra second from next year to go up and get him, you said that's an overpay.
And a third this year.
And a third this year? Ooh, that gets a little spicy. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, I think I'd do it. That's how strongly I believe in Bo Nix being a highly productive player at the quarterback spot.
Yeah, that's how strongly you believe and how petty you are.
Oh, yeah. I probably put the petty above the belief. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Part of me is curious, based on the guys that we've talked about, where they fall. Man,
but here's the thing.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Like, at the end of the day, I love the idea of doing that, but what if instead of doing that at 15, you trade back into, I don't know, 20 or wherever, pick up an extra third, maybe a bottom of the round second, and you're able to still get the guy you would have gotten at 15 that you were looking at, or somebody equivalent, and then pick up another offensive lineman in the second, and then in the third, fourth, or fifth, pick up Jordan Travis. I kind of like that game plan the most.
Yeah, that one makes the most sense because you're in all likelihood not starting a quarterback ahead of Geno anyway. You've paid him. It makes Sam Howell expendable potentially to where you could get draft picks for him, similar to how when they drafted Russ, they still had two quarterbacks. They ended up getting rid of Tavares Jackson. So yeah, gosh, I don't even know. Would they decide to trade Geno or would they decide to trade Howell? I don't know how that part would work out. But in terms of building draft capital and not taking risks, like that's the less risky way to go for sure.
Right, with still an enormous amount of upside. I mean, Jordan Travis is a tremendous prospect. I for the life of me can't figure out why he's projected so far down the board. So let's take advantage of that inefficiency in the draft, and I think that would be really cool. And also, too, I think that also helps set somebody like Jordan Travis up for success, only because there isn't the pressure of being that first round draft pick and the guy who's up next. And yeah, like I'm not in a hurry to get rid of Geno Smith either.
Right.
Just listening to his presser from the last week and a half and, all the things that he had to say there, that was just refreshing and fun. And I love Geno Smith. I think he's a hell of a NFL quarterback at this point in his career. So, yeah, I mean, as long as it's not Rattler, like I'm pretty cool with them taking a dude later in the draft. And I know they brought him in for a visit.
Well, they could take Rattler if he's there in the 5th round.
Sure. Yeah, I wouldn't be as mad then. Yeah. But
fine.
people talk about him like a second round guy.
Yeah, I don't see it, but yeah, and that's trying to go through everybody's thoughts on quarterbacks and knocking Jaden Daniels for his receiving talent and who he was throwing to, but then not doing that for Rattler when Rattler got bailed out so many times by his receivers. That makes no sense.
Yeah. And, part of it, I think, if you're predetermined going into it, and I think for people who watch a fair amount of college football, like, good luck not having a predetermined thought process.
Oh, sure.
If you really are like trying to break these guys down, I don't know how you would do it. I really don't. So I don't blame them. Like, I find the guys that analyze QBs that I respect the most are the guys that are the furthest removed from the college game. And so when you go back and you watch the tape, you're like, okay, yeah, he's getting bailed out by his receivers a bunch here. Ooh, but that was a tight window throw. Like you start because you don't have this in your head, like, oh, the only reason he's good is because he had good receivers, and or vice versa with Rattler. Like Joel Klatt, the college analyst that I think is with Fox.
Yeah.
Really smart guy. He knows college football inside and out. When it comes to projecting quarterbacks at the NFL level, I take his stuff with a huge grain of salt because they're like the same guys that are calling the games that quarterback hits a guy in a wide ass open NFL window, and they're like, "Ooh, look at that tight window throw," and you're like, "No, no, that's just pitch and catch." Like they've bought into the hype because they've been part of the hype for the entire year, and I think some guys get killed because of the hype or anti-hype around him. Oh, he's just got good receivers, so he can't be good.
The two analysts then that I think would be the best two to watch that don't take college into, because I don't think Chris Sims watched a lot of football, college football,
Yep.
and he does his quarterback rankings every year, and I think he tends to be pretty good. And then Kurt Warner, I think, is another one where he breaks down the tape and at a high level and knows what he's looking for and doesn't watch college football. And so those are the two guys to me that I take a lot away from when I'm listening to them.
Oh, 100%. We didn't talk about this beforehand. Those would have been my two dudes,
Okay.
without question. And I think you can sneak JT O'Sullivan into there as well with
Okay.
QB school.
Yeah.
I think because he is so pro quarterback, I think sometimes he gets he's not as harsh in some areas as I think he should be, or he gets a little too dazzled by like maybe really QB nuance rather than seeing the forest from the trees a little bit, gets sucked down on a granular level that way. But yeah, Kurt and Chris, I think they're probably two of the best going right now. And one of the things that I really like about Kurt is he came back this year and was like, look, there's not a lot to go off of NFL wise with a lot of these guys. Like you have to watch, 20 games to find enough NFL style stuff to make an opinion on any of these guys because the college game is so rinky dink and just ridiculous. And he's like, this stuff that never works on Sunday and it never will. And that's why I respect Kurt's analysis a lot, because he played it from the exact opposite way that the college game is played, right? In the Mike Martz system, and just the deep shots, the greatest show on turf, and all the levels concepts and all that. He sees it, from the complete opposite end of the spectrum.
And he's played at all those levels, and he's played at NFL Europe, and yeah, his breadth of experience is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's interesting. And one of the things I love listening to Kurt talk about is when he's breaking down a play, he'll be like, all right, well, in our system, I would have read this out, from inside to outside, high to low or whatever, right? He's like,
Yeah.
but it looks like in their system, they're reading it this way. And so that kind of helps you get an idea of what the quarterbacks are looking at, what they're trying to get done. And because that's the other thing that we got to, try to do when we're looking at these college dudes is separate them from, like trying to separate Caleb from Kingsbury. It's like, God dang it. Like, I hate trying to separate quarterbacks from the Kingsbury offense because it is such garbage. It's hard to do.
For as much praise as we've given Kurt Warner, I do want to make two caveats. One, he's the second greatest Kurt Warner. We all know who the first is, and he played for our Seahawks.
Yeah.
And I really respect Kurt Warner for what he did for the Giants, because that's the only team that I recognize him as having any kind of greatness, because screw the Cardinals and the Rams.
Right. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I wasn't sad to see Kurt do well in Arizona just because it was a great story. You think that'd be more your position? You're the story guy.
I know. I do like the story, but I had to inject a little bit of sports hate into this conversation as well. I thought that was important.
I think that is important. And I guess the other thing that's important, Brandon, I'm curious as to, do you think, would you be happy, or do you think it's important, or, where is it on your hierarchy of needs for the Seahawks to go quarterback at some point in this draft?
I think because of the amount of talent, and because we're talking about Jordan Travis being available potentially in the third, and gosh, even if you go off some of these mock drafts in the fourth, it
Some
would
say the
be
sixth.
yeah, it would be silly. It would be really silly to not take a quarterback at some point. So I think that potential is there. Gosh, if Nix really is sliding and he gets past Denver, and you can drop into the back half of the first round and take them there and get extra picks, makes a ton of sense. I'd be even fine with them staying put. It's one of those drafts where it's kind of they're in a unique position to where one of them's going to be available where they shouldn't be.
Right. I kind of feel like if Nix, Penix, or Travis is available in a spot where you're like, just
What are
how?
they? Yeah. Why are they still here?
Yeah, I think you have to go for it. And obviously with Nix being the highest out of those, I stick and pick at 15. I'd
And that's even talking about the guys like, if Pratt were there in the 4th, or if Rattler were there in the 5th.
Yeah, okay. I'm way less fired up about those guys.
No, but I mean, it just as far as taking one.
Yeah. I mean, and
You
again,
can be excited about those guys because they're
I
not
don't
in
know.
our top 7.
It's a little burning a pick just to burn a pick on those two guys for me. Whereas I feel like somebody like Travis, if you're picking him in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, like you're like, there's potentially like high end quarterback talent at late in the draft.
Okay.
I mean,
So
Dak
we both
Prescott
agree
kind
that
of
Pratt and Rattler, Sam Howell, it's a wash.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
all those dudes are the same dude to me.
Yeah,
like, I mean, I know they all have different styles and everything, but kind of like a big puddle of meh.
Yeah, why did you make the trade for Howell if you're going to draft one of these guys in the 4th or 5th? And I mean, yeah,
sure, exactly.
Okay,
yeah,
just make it. Yeah, we're on the same page then.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't mind seeing them, get it done there at that position as well, just because it's a new regime. You're starting to rebuild, and I know a lot of people don't see it that way, but I mean, this team is going through a lot of change right now, and part of that with a new regime, a lot of times you want to get your guy in there as the quarterback. And listening to Gino's presser last week, and they asked him what it felt like when he heard the news that Pete was going to be leaving the team, and he talked about, Pete was my guy. Like, he gave me the opportunity and all that stuff. That's not this regime. Like, these guys are like, all right, fine, you're good enough for this year, and then we'll go from there. And I would be surprised if they don't start the clock with somebody new, if not this year, next year. And I don't know what the next year's group of dudes look like even at this point. So
yeah, I have a hard time believing it's as good as this year. So this may be the year to do it. We're going to have to see. We're going to be following it live, though, Adam. Thursday night, I'm going to be doing a live show out on YouTube, youtube.com/Seahawkers podcast. So we hope that you will subscribe, drop us a like on this video, drop us a like on future videos or any of the past ones that you check out as well. But join us live, and you'll get once you subscribe, you'll get the notifications when we're going live as part of the draft. Shoot, we might kick things off. And just to see how these quarterbacks fall, just especially after going through the series, and to see how it ultimately ends up playing out on draft day.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, I know for sure, I think I'm going to have a few beers. So there'll be a little bit of that factor into it. That's always fun. Okay. Some people enjoy that. And then I imagine Clinton might partake in a few brewskis as well. So a little semi buzz draft live podcast.
Interesting. Well, so we'll have the buzzed half, and Phil and I will probably be the non-buzzed half, but we'll all be there watching the draft as it happens, and I'm looking forward to it. We're through the season. We're into draft week, Adam. It's going to be fun. It's finally here. We're going to get to see who our Seahawks pick, and we're that much closer to the NFL season.
I am absolutely fascinated to see if the Seahawks drafting strategy appears much like it did under Pete, or if there are some market changes now with Mike here in his staff. You listen to, let's see, they had the assistant GM. What was his name? Was it Trevor something?
Trent?
No, Trent Kirshner is the pro player side of things.
Oh, okay.
The assistant GM was Trevor something, I think. I didn't even know he existed until that interview.
Well, Nolan Teasley is the assistant general manager, it says.
Yeah, Nolan. I had Nolan.
Okay. You were way off.
Way off. Whiffed. Typhooned it. Yeah. But anyways,
nobody knew. People are like, oh, maybe it is Trevor.
I don't know. Yeah, no, I didn't know that Nolan was the assistant GM until the other day. I'd watched their presser, but you listen to all them talk, and it's like, oh no, it's exactly the same. Like the process will be.
Well, it's the same. It's the same guys.
Well, I get that, but even if the process is the same, aren't the targets slightly different?
I guess we'll see.
I don't know. That's what I find fascinating.
And I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.